Right now, the Northeast United States is digging out from what many are already calling the blizzard of 2026. In just 2 days, parts of Rhode Island took almost 38 inches of snow, a new state record, while much of the region was buried under 2 to 3 feet. At least 7 people have lost their lives, and more than 600,000 customers were left without power at the peak. Here is the important part. Even as airports struggle to restart and crews fight to restore electricity, a fresh wave of winter storm warnings is already spreading across 14 states.
A video, yeah. This is crazy.
In the mirrors.
First, we had to find our vehicle under a sea of snow, and then we had to start digging it out. Now we need to jump.
Winter Storm Hernando did not look historic at first. It began as a strong low-pressure system forming over the central United States around February 20th, then slid toward the Atlantic and locked onto the perfect fuel source, cold Arctic air on land and a deep pool of moisture over the ocean. As the system moved off the New England coast, the pressure dropped rapidly, turning it into a classic nor'easter. By February 23rd, it had intensified into what meteorologists call a bomb cyclone, with a central pressure near 964 to 965 millibars just off New England.
Paradise, Newfoundland, where I had one window that I could crawl out. Look at this shit.
From that point, the storm behaved like a snow machine aimed straight at the Northeast. Blinding bands of snow lined up along the coast from New Jersey to Maine. For many hours, winds gusted over 35 miles per hour, while visibility dropped close to zero. In several parts of New Jersey, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Maine, the official criteria for a blizzard were met. Strong winds, heavy snow, and near whiteout conditions lasting long enough that travel became almost impossible.
Wow. Fucking snow's coming down quicker and we can move.
What was you talking last night?
The numbers that followed explain why people are calling this the blizzard of 2026. Across much of the region, 2 to 3 feet of snow piled up in less than 2 days. At Providence's T.F. Green Airport in Rhode Island, 37.9 inches fell, setting a new 2-day snowfall record for the entire state and surpassing famous storms from the 1970s. Parts of Connecticut and Massachusetts reported well over 30 inches. In New York City, totals in some neighborhoods pushed toward the top 10 snowstorms in the city's recorded history, enough to shut down streets, bury cars along the curb, and leave entire blocks looking frozen in place. For millions of people, that meant waking up to front doors blocked by snow, streets that emergency vehicles could barely reach, and neighborhoods already worrying about what would happen when the lights went out.
Biscuit! You can do it, you can do it, you can do it, come on, come on, come on, come on.
By the morning of February 23rd, the storm had shifted from a forecast on a map to a full shutdown of everyday life. According to the National Weather Service and regional authorities, wind-driven snow began to close major highways from New Jersey up through Massachusetts and into coastal Maine. State leaders in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Delaware, and Pennsylvania all declared states of emergency. In many places, trucks and buses were pulled off the roads. On key interstate routes, restrictions on commercial vehicles went into effect as visibility fell and lanes disappeared under drifting snow.
Okay. Buenos días, ya me salí a limpiarme. No se miren los carros. Así estamos hoy. Miren los carros.
DTA knows.
This is too bad.
Blizzard of 2020.
At the same time, the power grid across the Northeast came under extreme stress. Heavy, wet snow and hurricane-force gusts along parts of the Massachusetts and Rhode Island coast snapped tree limbs and brought down lines. Here is the important part. Data tracked by poweroutage.us show that, at the peak on February 23rd, Nearly 647,000 customers lost electricity across 7 northeastern states. Massachusetts and New Jersey were hit especially hard, while coastal communities on Cape Cod and nearby towns watched entire neighborhoods go dark. Utility companies such as Eversource called in more than 2,000 repair crews, including teams from other states and Canada, but deep snow, icy roads, and fallen trees slowed almost every kilometer of progress. Air travel fared no better. Over the worst 24 hours, more than 5,700 flights within, into, or out of the United States were canceled, and another 3,400 were delayed, according to airline tracking services. Nearly 1 in 5 flights nationwide was affected. Hubs like JFK and LaGuardia in New York, Newark in New Jersey, Boston Logan, Philadelphia, and Reagan National near Washington, D.C., turned into holding areas for stranded passengers sleeping in terminals and lining up at customer service desks. Even as the storm began to move away on February 24th, airlines were still digging out planes, de-icing runways, and trying to restart their schedules. American Airlines alone added more than 4,000 extra seats by shifting aircraft and increasing capacity at key airports to clear the backlog.
Mire como está. Até mesmo para limpar está muito difícil.
Schools and public services followed the same pattern. Many major school districts in New York, New Jersey, and New England closed on February 23rd and 24th, turning what should have been a normal week into an unplanned winter break. When some schools tried to reopen on February 25th, attendance lagged. Reports from New York City suggested that only about 63% of students returned immediately, as families struggled with unshoveled sidewalks, delayed buses, and lingering safety concerns on icy streets. These are the headlines and the numbers. The real weight of this blizzard only becomes clear when you look at the people living inside those dark homes, stalled cars, and buried streets. For families across the Northeast, this blizzard was not a headline. It was a long, cold night broken by the sound of wind, sirens, and snowplows. In neighborhoods around Providence, Boston, and coastal New Jersey, people woke up to find front doors frozen shut and cars buried almost to the roofline. Parents weighed the risk of sending someone outside to start clearing a path while the wind was still strong and the snow was still blowing sideways. Some chose to stay indoors and wait. Others knew that if they did not dig out early, emergency services might not reach them later.
First, we had to find our vehicle under a sea of snow. And then we had to start digging it out. Now we need to jump in the mirrors.
In many communities, the snow itself was not the only danger. Here is the important part. At least 7 deaths have been linked directly to the storm in Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, including traffic accidents in nearly zero visibility, incidents that happened while people were trying to clear heavy snow, and cases of carbon monoxide poisoning when vehicles or exhaust vents were blocked. Authorities repeated the same warnings again and again. Clear the area around your car before starting the engine. Keep vents free of snow, and never run generators or grills indoors. Those messages came too late for some.
Wow. Fucking snow's coming down quicker and we can move.
The emotional strain showed up in smaller ways as well. In New York City, parents described trying to keep children calm and entertained inside apartments that suddenly felt much smaller, especially when online lessons were canceled and playgrounds were buried. In coastal Massachusetts, residents without power reported crowding into the few homes that still had heat, sharing blankets, candles, and phone chargers. Volunteer groups checked on older neighbors and people living alone, sometimes walking through knee-deep drifts just to ring a doorbell and make sure someone answered. At the same time, there were moments of tension and frustration. Videos spread of teenagers turning piles of snow into battlegrounds and even throwing snow at police officers in a city still under a weather emergency. In Rhode Island, debates flared over where truckloads of dirty snow should be dumped, especially when they were sent into already stressed neighborhoods in South Providence. These scenes captured a simple truth about extreme weather. It does not hit every community in the same way, and it often exposes the cracks that were already there. When a storm like this is over, the damage is measured in more than broken trees and snow totals. In the Northeast, entire communities are now dealing with what it means to live without reliable power, transportation, or routine for days at a time. Hundreds of thousands of customers lost electricity at the peak of the blizzard, and many along the Massachusetts coast and Cape Cod still do not have it back. For families who rely on electric heat, that meant moving in with relatives or neighbors, crowding into community centers, or using every blanket they own just to keep indoor temperatures above freezing. Small towns and big cities alike are now spending long hours clearing streets, reopening bus routes, and making sure ambulances and fire trucks can reach every neighborhood. The economic impact is spreading through the system in waves. Airlines are counting the cost of canceling more than 9,000 flights over several days, refunding tickets, paying crews, and running de-icing operations at full speed. Local businesses that depend on foot traffic lost entire weekends of income as people stayed home and city centers shut down early. Here is the important part. Even for those far from the worst-hit streets, energy bills are expected to rise as natural gas prices climbed around 4% during the storm, driven by intense heating demand and worries about supply. For many households already under financial pressure, a single extreme weather event can turn into weeks of difficult decisions about which bills to pay first. There is also a quieter environmental cost. Cities like New York, Boston, and Providence are using snowmelter machines and truck convoys to move mountains of plowed snow out of busy areas. That snow is not clean. It is mixed with road salt, oil, trash, and debris. In Rhode Island, the decision to dump snow into parts of South Providence, a community already dealing with pollution and health concerns, has sparked fresh questions about environmental justice and who bears the heaviest burden after major storms. Residents and advocates are asking whether the same choices would be made in wealthier neighborhoods. In the coming days, the focus will shift from clearing snow to deciding how to rebuild and who will pay for it. That is where the story of disaster relief, insurance, and federal aid begins. In the first days after the blizzard of 2026, the most visible work is happening on the streets and along the power lines. Utility companies have sent thousands of line crews into Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and other affected states, many of them driving in from the Midwest and even from Canada under mutual aid agreements. Their task is simple to describe and slow to complete. Cut fallen branches, replace snapped poles, restring heavy cables, and test every segment of the grid while snowbanks still tower over the sidewalks. In coastal communities on Cape Cod and along the Rhode Island shore, that work is even harder because the same winds that brought blizzard conditions also battered the shoreline and left equipment exposed to salt, ice, and debris. State and local governments are working in layers. National Guard units have been deployed to help clear major routes, transport patients from isolated neighborhoods, and support shelters for people who cannot stay in their homes. Cities like New York, Boston, and Providence are coordinating fleets of snowplows, front loaders, and snowmelter machines, focusing first on hospitals, fire stations, transit hubs, and school zones. Volunteers are filling in the gaps, from faith groups running warming centers to community organizations delivering hot meals and checking on older residents or people with disabilities who may not be able to dig themselves out. In many places, the first real sign that life is returning to normal is the sound of a bus engine at the end of the street or the lights coming back on in a small grocery store. Behind the scenes, the financial response is taking shape. Governors in the hardest-hit states are preparing disaster declarations and cost estimates to send to Washington, hoping to unlock federal assistance for debris removal, infrastructure repair, and support to families and businesses. FEMA is under pressure to stretch a disaster budget that has already been strained by floods, fires, and storms in other parts of the country, raising questions about how quickly money can reach local projects on the ground. Insurance claims are beginning to stack up as homeowners report roof damage, frozen pipes, and ruined inventory. For small businesses and low-income families, the difference between a quick, coordinated response and a slow, underfunded one may decide whether this blizzard is remembered as a setback or a breaking point. All of these efforts point toward a larger question that will dominate the weeks and months ahead. What can be done now to make sure the next winter storm does not hit this hard again? When meteorologists describe this as a historic blizzard, they are looking at more than just the snow totals. They see the way Winter Storm Hernando evolved, a strong disturbance crossing the continent, tapping deep Atlantic moisture, then rapidly intensifying off New England as a bomb cyclone. That combination produced snowfall rates up to several centimeters per hour and winds close to 100 miles per hour along parts of the coast. In terms of coverage, intensity, and disruption, many experts are already placing this event alongside the great Northeast blizzards of the 1990s. Here is the important part. A storm like this does not happen in a vacuum. Warmer oceans and a slightly warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture, which means that when conditions line up just right, winter storms can dump extraordinary amounts of snow in a short time. At the same time, millions of people today live in coastal and urban areas where aging infrastructure, dense housing, and complex transportation networks turn every hour of disruption into real economic and social damage. The blizzard of 2026 is a case study in how weather, climate, and human systems are now tightly linked. That is why the discussion is already shifting from how bad was this storm to how do we prepare for the next one. Engineers and local leaders are talking about hardening the power grid by burying more lines where possible, trimming trees proactively, and building microgrids that can keep critical services running even when the main network fails. Cities are reviewing snow removal plans, school closure rules, and communication strategies to make sure people receive clear, timely warnings about travel bans and power risks. Advocates are also pushing for stronger environmental and social safeguards so that decisions about where to dump snow or where to prioritize repairs do not consistently fall hardest on the same vulnerable neighborhoods. In the end, this blizzard may be remembered less for the day it hit than for the choices communities make afterward. The final question is whether those choices will leave the Northeast better protected before the next name appears on the winter storm maps. Right now, the maps will show the blizzard of 2026 as a fading swirl of clouds off the Atlantic. But for millions of people across the Northeast, this storm is still very real. In the snowbanks that turn every errand into a climb, in the homes that are still cold and dark, and in the empty seats at classrooms and workplaces that could not reopen on time. We have seen record-breaking snow in Rhode Island, major cities like New York and Boston slowed to a crawl, and communities from Maryland to Massachusetts counting the cost in lives, lost income, and damaged infrastructure. And there is a deeper lesson here. This blizzard is not just a story about what nature can do. It is a reminder of how fragile everyday systems become when power lines fail, when roads close, and when support does not reach the people who need it most. At the same time, we have watched neighbors dig each other out, volunteers check on older residents, and crews work through the night to bring the lights back on. That resilience will shape how the Northeast recovers from this week and how it faces the next storm already forming on the horizon. If you found this update helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might be affected and subscribe so you do not miss our next briefing on severe weather and safety. In the comments, tell us, after watching what happened in this blizzard, what is one step you think your own household or community should take to be better prepared before the next major winter storm arrives?